Eric Clapton watched John Mayer perform Your Body is a Wonderland on television in 2002 and thought, this is who they're comparing to me? Mayer was talented, clearly, but he was a pop star singing soft rock ballads to teenage girls. When journalists started calling Mayer the next Clapton, Eric was more confused than offended. Then, Mayer started claiming the title himself, and confusion turned to concern. Not because Clapton felt threatened. At 58, he had nothing to prove, but because Mayer was making the same mistakes Clapton had made decades earlier, trying to claim authenticity in a genre he hadn't paid dues in, using technique to compensate for lack of cultural understanding. When they finally shared a stage in 2004, Clapton decided to give Mayer the education he wished someone had given him. The comparison started innocently enough. John Mayer had burst onto the music scene in 2001 with his debut album Room for Swoon, which spawned the hit No Such Thing. He was 23, boyishly handsome, and had the technical guitar skills to back up his pop sensibilities. But what bothered Mayer was that nobody in the guitar community took him seriously. Guitar magazines reviewed his albums in their pop section, not with the rock or blues records. When he mentioned his influences, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, B.B. King, journalists would smile politely and steer the conversation back to his love songs. Mayer felt trapped in a box labeled singer-songwriter when he wanted to be in the box labeled guitarist. So when a Rolling Stone writer asked him in late 2002 who he saw as his musical predecessor, Mayer made a calculation. Eric Clapton, he said. I'm carrying forward what he started, blues-based guitar playing for a new generation. The writer, sensing a headline, pushed further. Are you saying you're the next Clapton? Mayer, young and eager to be taken seriously, didn't back down. I'm saying I'm the Clapton for people my age. He had his moment. Now it's mine. The quote made headlines. John Mayer, I'm the new Clapton, ran on music websites. Guitar forums exploded with debate. Some defended Mayer's technical abilities. Most ridiculed him for arrogance. And in London, Eric Clapton read the article with a mixture of confusion and recognition. Confusion because Mayer's music sounded nothing like blues. Recognition because he remembered being 25 and desperate to claim authenticity in a genre he loved but didn't fully understand yet. He's making my mistakes, Clapton said to his longtime friend and manager. He's trying to claim the blues instead of earning them. Over the next 2 years, Mayer doubled down. He formed the John Mayer Trio, a blues-focused group that allowed him to showcase his guitar playing without the pop song structures. He gave interviews talking about his blues purity, his respect for the tradition, his role as a torchbearer. But the more Mayer claimed the blues, the more the blues community rejected him. Older black blues musicians were particularly unimpressed. That boy can play, but he doesn't know what he's playing about. Blues ain't just technique, it's lived experience. Buddy Guy, the legendary blues guitarist who'd mentored everyone from Hendrix to Stevie Ray Vaughan, watched Mayer's trajectory with concern. When Mayer approached him backstage at a festival in 2003, asking for validation, Buddy was direct.
You got the fingers, Buddy said, but you're trying to claim something instead of living it. Eric Clapton spent years getting called a blues thief, working to prove he respected the tradition. You're skipping that part. You're saying you deserve respect without doing the work to earn it. But I've practiced for thousands of hours, Mayer protested. I know the scales, the licks, the phrasing. That's technique, Buddy replied. I'm talking about understanding, about cultural respect, about knowing that when you're a white boy playing black music, you gotta pay your dues double. Mayer bristled at this. He felt he was being judged for things he couldn't control. His race, his pop success, his age. Why couldn't his playing speak for itself? This was the mindset Meyer was in when Eric Clapton's office called in early 2004. Clapton was organizing the second Crossroads Guitar Festival, a charity event featuring the greatest guitarists alive. Would Meyer be interested in performing? Meyer said yes immediately. This was his chance. Performing at Crossroads would legitimize him in the eyes of the guitar community. He'd be on the same stage as B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Robert Cray, Jeff Beck, and Eric Clapton himself. He spent months preparing. He practiced blues standards until his fingers bled. He studied old B.B. King performances, copying phrasing and vibrato. He wanted to prove, once and for all, that he belonged. What Meyer didn't know was that Clapton had invited him for a very different reason. Clapton wasn't inviting Meyer to celebrate him. He was inviting him to teach him. The Crossroads Guitar Festival took place in June 2004 at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas. 40,000 people attended, and the lineup was staggering. Basically, every great living guitarist performing on one stage over 2 days. Meyer arrived confident but nervous. He'd prepared a set with his trio, bass, drums, and his guitar. No safety net of pop songs, pure blues. He wanted everyone to see he wasn't just a pretty boy with love songs. Backstage on the second day, Meyer ran into Clapton for the first time. They'd never actually met in person, despite 2 years of Meyer claiming to be Clapton's successor. "John," Clapton said, extending his hand. His voice was friendly, but his eyes were evaluating. "Good to finally meet you." "It's an honor," Meyer said, meaning it despite his defensive posture about the comparisons. "I've been following your career," Clapton said. "I see you've been saying some interesting things about carrying the blues torch." Meyer felt his face flush. "I didn't mean to be disrespectful. I'm not offended," Clapton interrupted. "I'm curious. What do you think blues guitar is?" The question seemed simple, but Meyer sensed it was a trap. It's emotional expression through the guitar, using specific scales and techniques to convey feeling. Right, that's part of it, but why those specific scales? Why that specific feeling? Where does it come from? Meyer knew the textbook answer. From African American experience, from hardship and oppression turned into art. Right, and what's your experience with that? The question hung in the air. Meyer had no answer. He was a comfortable middle-class kid from Connecticut who'd gone to Berklee School of Music and signed a major label deal at 22. His hardships were not the hardships that created the blues. "That's what I thought," Clapton said, not unkindly. "That was my problem, too, at your age. I was a white British kid playing black American music, and I thought technique was enough. I thought if I could play the licks, I'd earned the right to claim the genre." "But you did earn it," Meyer said. "You're a blues legend."
After decades of work, and of learning respect, and of understanding that being good at blues guitar doesn't make you a blues musician, it makes you someone who can play blues guitar, Clapton paused. "Do you understand the difference?" Meyer didn't, not really, but he was about to. When Meyer took the stage that evening with his trio, he was determined to prove himself. The set started strong. He played Stevie Ray Vaughan's Texas Flood with technical precision. His solo was fast, his tone was good, his fingers were flawless. The crowd applauded respectfully, not enthusiastically, but respectfully. Then Meyer played an original blues tune he'd written. It was technically sophisticated, showing off his Berklee training with complex chord progressions and jazz-influenced runs. Again, the crowd applauded. Again, it was respect without enthusiasm. From the side of the stage, Eric Clapton watched. Next to him stood Buddy Guy, B.B. King, and several other blues legends. "He plays well," B.B. King observed. "He plays perfectly," Buddy Guy corrected. "That's the problem." Clapton understood what Buddy meant. Meyer's playing was technically flawless, but emotionally calculated. Every note was the right note according to theory. Every phrase was constructed to demonstrate knowledge, but there was no vulnerability, no risk, no real emotion. It was blues as academic exercise, not blues as human expression. After Meyer's set, Clapton made a decision. He walked to the stage manager and changed the schedule. "I'm going to play with John," he said. "Bring him back out." Mayer was backstage, feeling good about his performance, but also sensing something wasn't quite right. The applause had been polite, professional, but not passionate. He'd played everything correctly, every note in the right place, every technique executed flawlessly, but the connection he'd hoped for hadn't materialized. He felt like he'd given a perfect presentation instead of having a conversation. That's when a stagehand found him. Eric Clapton wants you back on stage. He wants to jam with you. Mayer's stomach dropped. This was either a huge honor or a public execution, maybe both. He knew what this was. Clapton had watched his set and decided Mayer needed a lesson. The question was whether it would be a gentle lesson or a brutal one. He walked back onto the massive stage where Clapton was already waiting with his Stratocaster, that iconic instrument that had been the voice of so many legendary performances. The crowd, which had been merely respectful for Mayer, erupted for Clapton. The difference in reception was humbling. This was what genuine blues credibility sounded like. "What are we playing?" Mayer asked nervously. "How about Further On Up the Road?" Clapton suggested. It was a blues standard, simple 12-bar progression, something every blues player knew. They started. Clapton played rhythm while Mayer took the first solo. Mayer played well, technically impressive, hitting all the right notes, demonstrating his vocabulary. The crowd applauded. Then Clapton took his solo, and in the first 3 notes, Mayer understood what he'd been missing.
Clapton didn't play more notes than Mayer. He didn't play faster or more technically complex. What he played was simpler, but every note meant something. Every bend had purpose. Every pause was intentional. He wasn't demonstrating blues vocabulary. He was speaking blues language. The difference was profound. Mayer's playing had been like someone reciting poetry in a language they'd learned in school. Technically correct, but emotionally hollow. Clapton's playing was like a native speaker telling a story they'd lived. The crowd felt it instantly. The energy in the Cotton Bowl shifted. People weren't just watching anymore. They were feeling. Clapton played for maybe 2 minutes, but it felt eternal. He built tension, released it, built it again. He quoted classic blues phrases, but twisted them with his own perspective. He made his guitar cry, but not in a showy way, in the way people actually cry, with restraint and dignity and accumulated pain. When he finished his solo and looked at Mayer, nodding for him to take another, Mayer froze for a moment. He understood now, standing on that stage in front of 40,000 people, that he'd been playing blues wrong. Not technically wrong, philosophically wrong. Mayer's second solo was different. He played fewer notes. He took risks, leaving space, allowing mistakes. He stopped trying to prove he could play blues and started trying to feel blues. It wasn't perfect, he was learning in real time, but it was honest. After the performance, backstage, Clapton pulled Mayer aside. "You played differently in your second solo," Clapton observed. "I realized I was doing it wrong," Mayer admitted. "I've been treating blues like a test I needed to pass, but it's not about passing tests, is it?" "No, it's about communication, about saying something true through your instrument." Clapton paused. "You know why it bothered me when you said you were the new me? Because it was presumptuous? Because it misunderstands what this is. Blues isn't a throne you inherit or a title you claim. It's not about being the new anyone. It's about finding your own voice and speaking your own truth. When I was young, I tried to be the new Muddy Waters, the new Robert Johnson, and I failed because I wasn't them. I only succeeded when I stopped trying to be them and started being me, a British kid who loved blues and had to find his own way to express that love." "So what should I do?" Mayer asked. "Stop claiming to be the next me. Stop trying to prove you're a blues musician. Just be John Mayer who plays guitar honestly, whether that's blues or pop or jazz or whatever. Your generation doesn't need a new Clapton. They need an original Mayer." Mayer felt something shift inside him. For 2 years, he'd been running from his pop success, ashamed of Your Body is a Wonderland, desperate to be seen as serious. But Clapton, who had nothing to gain from being kind, was telling him that his pop background wasn't something to escape. It was part of his voice, part of what made him unique. "But won't people say I'm not a real blues musician?" Mayer asked. "Let them," Clapton said. "I spent decades worrying about that. What a waste. The people whose opinions matter will judge you by your honesty, not your genre. And the people who judge you by genre don't matter." The conversation lasted another hour. Clapton told Mayer about his own journey, the years he'd been called a blues thief, the work he'd done to earn respect from black blues musicians, the mistakes he'd made claiming authenticity he hadn't earned. "I spent years playing blues correctly," Clapton said. "Perfect technique, perfect tone, perfect note choices. And you know what happened? Nothing. I was just a very good mimic. I only became myself when I stopped trying to play blues the right way and started playing blues my way, with all my British influences, all my rock sensibility, all my imperfections. That's when people started listening." Mayer absorbed this. "So I shouldn't play blues? Play whatever you want, but play it honestly. And understand that respecting a tradition means more than just learning its techniques. It means understanding its history, acknowledging your relationship to it, and not claiming ownership of something that isn't yours to own." In the years that followed, Mayer's approach changed. He stopped calling himself the next Clapton. He acknowledged his pop background instead of running from it. He played blues when he felt blues and pop when he felt pop, and stopped worrying about which box critics put him in. And gradually, the blues community embraced him, not as the next anyone, but as John Mayer, a gifted guitarist who respected the tradition enough to not claim to own it. By 2010, Mayer was playing regularly with blues legends, and they spoke about him with genuine respect. Not because he'd proven he could play blues correctly, but because he'd learned to play honestly, with humility about his place in the tradition. Clapton and Mayer remained friends, collaborating occasionally. And when interviewers asked Mayer about the new Clapton comments, he'd laugh. "I was an idiot," he'd say. "I was so desperate to be taken seriously that I claimed something I hadn't earned. Eric taught me that you don't become a blues musician by declaring yourself one. You become one by serving the music instead of using it to serve yourself." The lesson wasn't about blues specifically. It was about authenticity, cultural respect, and the difference between technical ability and genuine expression. About understanding that mastering a vocabulary isn't the same as having something to say. Eric Clapton didn't crush John Mayer that night at Crossroads. He taught him, not because Mayer was a threat, but because Clapton recognized his younger self, talented, ambitious, insecure, making all the wrong moves for understandable reasons. And Mayer, to his credit, learned. He went from being a pop star trying to claim blues credibility to being a guitarist who could move fluidly between genres while respecting each one's history and meaning. That's the real story. Not a rivalry, not a competition, but a master recognizing a student and choosing to teach instead of humiliate.